It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome back to another review. Today we're taking a look at the SH Figuarts Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki Entrusted with Hope, and Sasuke Uchiha, He Who Bears All Hatred. Now I feel like some context is required without going into a full history. This is not the first time SH Figuarts has produced Naruto figures. They did it once before, way back, sort of around the Dragon Ball boom of Figuarts. But they sort of just petered off, and a lot of them became Bandai. So, for whatever reason, Tamashii Nations decided, you know what, let's go back and redo some Naruto Figuarts and actually include new ones. Like, for example, the next release after this is Sakura, who has never been released before. So, these are new versions of Naruto and Sasuke from Naruto Shippuden, and they are pretty fantastic. I'm really excited to get into these. So the reason why I'm reviewing these is because I wanted to see if Naruto interest still exists on the channel. I reviewed these old Tomy figures like years ago, and that video is really popular. But let me know in the comments if you want to see me continue to review these, because I am picking up the whole line at this point. Sakura's coming out in July, Kakashi's coming out in December. I'll keep getting them. I imported these, but these are going to have a full North American release. So in Japan, Naruto cost 3,850 yen, whereas Sasuke cost 6,050 yen. And that's, I think, because Sasuke comes with more parts, and they priced Naruto at this introductory price thing that they sort of do with their Kamen Rider and Ultraman Figuarts, where the main character is cheaper to kind of entice you into the line. But their retail price in the US will be $34.99 for Naruto, $59.99 for Sasuke. So keep that in mind when you're looking for these. Also keep in mind that you want to get this version of Naruto, because for some reason, even though they had this coming out, last year, Tamashii and Bandai re-released the previous Naruto Figuart in a best selection packaging, and that one is the same exact price as this new one, and this new one is 10 times better. So if you're looking for Figuarts Naruto and you see the best selection, just skip it on by and look for the Jinchuriki Entrusted with Hope version or the 2022 version. It does, you know, I think the box is like radically different, but essentially you're looking for this boxed version because they do look sort of similar, but this one has much better articulation overall. So there's that. I do like the packaging, the English version of the names, where you've got, you know, given name first, family name second. It's got the official Tamashii Nations quality sticker, as well as a Studio Pero sticker to verify it's an official product. So you want to look for those too, because bootleg Figuarts are a massive problem. But you can see a lot of the Japanese text is done on this side of the box, and then the English text on this side. And I like that it incorporates both in that regard, and then the back of the packaging. So if you're looking for it in North America when it comes out later, there will be probably a giant sticker that says Bandai Namco Toys and Collectibles America. This is the Japanese release. But if you're looking for these, hopefully they're not too hard to get. I mostly got mine imported because I wanted to get them right away. I was really excited. You got Sasuke Uchiha, He Who Bears All Hatred. Once again, this one is going to be so much better than the previous Sasuke's. So that's the ones I'm reviewing, are these new updated ones, because they have better articulation and better molding overall, I think. The previous Naruto Figuarts were kind of on the old system. These are on the new system. So I like that Bandai is trying it out. And so far, of the 4 that have been announced, they've been all retail releases, which is fantastic. But yeah, let's crack into them. Let's take a look and see how these are. I don't have a ton of other figures to compare to, but I do have a couple comparisons lined up. So I hope you stick around and enjoy this review. Let's start with Naruto. Here's the knucklehead ninja himself, Naruto Uzumaki. And honestly, I like his Shippuden design, but it's funny. I always kind of wonder why we never get any Kid Naruto stuff. I know Shippuden, anime-wise and manga-wise, is a much larger chunk of the story, but it's always cool that they do jump to the Shippuden looks, but sometimes I do wonder if we'll ever get like a Kid Naruto in a Figuarts style. Then he goes instantly out of focus because I moved him out of the frame. Anyways, this Naruto figure is actually really nicely molded overall, because what I noticed about the newer Figuarts in general, they've been trying to go for more realistic details. So you can see a lot more cloth-like details where it's not so symmetrical in the sculpting, but essentially you get this kind of idea that it does look like fabric, which gives it a little bit more depth than the, kind of flat style that we see with a lot of figures, which I really appreciate. Once again, I think every time I talk about Figuarts, I'm like, oh yeah, the paint detail's great. Yeah, because the figures are expensive. But honestly, considering he is a lower priced figure than, say, Sasuke, he is not a standard figure at price. He is, around $35 instead of close to $70. It's pretty nice that he's got all of these details painted in. He's not lower detailed because he's lower price. I think they just anticipate selling more Naruto than anybody else, so they make his price a little bit lower, gets more people to buy it. And in the case of Naruto, if you want to get a bunch of shadow clones, they're not going to cost you, you know, 60 bucks a piece. They're going to cost you about 30 bucks a piece, which isn't too bad. So looking at him, he looks really good. Now, you know, I think this has been a discussion since these were revealed, but essentially the proportions are kind of wacky. And I agree, especially because like the hands are gigantic, the legs seem kind of short, and then the heads seem kind of big on some of them and small on others. It's really strange. But what I realized what it was, that they're not very great when you have them standing like this. The proportions look really strange. What these figures are designed to do is pose really dynamically. And so because of that, the actual like standing stock still pose looks a little weird. That being said, I don't think it looks that bad. I've seen a lot more figures, like a lot of amazing Yamaguchi figures from Revoltech are like that. But looking at Naruto's articulation, let's just break it down. So first of all, his head is on a ball joint at the top of the neck. There is a ball joint at the bottom of the neck as well. The headband also moves out, which I think is a great point of articulation. Not a ball joint, just a simple hinge, but that allows him to look all the way up. Plus they sculpted his chin, so it covers that, so you don't have a weird gap. So if you want him in a, you know, Naruto running pose, which is, this is not an indicative example of, you can see there that, you know, you can tilt his head all the way up, and that gives him, you know, sort of that pose option. And then you can tilt the head all the way down too, if that is what you desire. Shoulder-wise, these, of course, are standard ball joints like we've seen a lot of Figuarts, but they also pull forward really far and they pull back really far. Once again, if you're doing those Naruto running poses, which we will attempt later on. Bicep swivels, double jointed elbow with, you know, extra molding to cover the socket area. The wrists are the standard Figuarts hips, or sorry, Figuart wrists that move up and down. They rotate so they can move in and out, whichever way you want. Torso-wise, he just has that full double ball range. So all the way forward, all the way back, pretty extensive. Hips move all the way out. They don't pull down, but they do move pretty far forward and pretty okay back. Bandai's never been good so much at like clearing the butt when it comes to articulation, but if you get it, you can get it that far. Also his little pouch is ball jointed, which is really nice. Thigh swivel there, which also has an in and out ball joint. So you actually have a ball joint on the thigh swivel, which gives a little bit more range. Double jointed knee, pretty good. You've got rotation at the cuff here, in and out, front and back. And there actually is like a floating piece here to cover that joint wherever it moves, which is pretty nice. And then he's got a little bit of a toe joint. So he can pose incredibly well. It just takes a lot of work to get all the joints in motion. And then you can do better things than Naruto doing taiko drumming here. But let's get some accessories, because he definitely comes with quite a few, which is nice considering his price. So first things first, Naruto does have some swappable parts. First of all, his hands, they just pop off in these little ball joints, and they pop on pretty good. It actually does have a nice feel to it, because I think the hands are a softer material, which helps. And then he has alternate faces, which you can just reach up in here and remove like that. You just gotta kind of push them up. It's not like some other Figuarts where there's a split in the hair. That is one solid piece. So essentially you just got to get in there, pop his face on, which is actually a pretty good system and works pretty effectively. There is one other thing, is that his arms are swappable, and those just come right out and pop right back in. Though be careful, because this top bicep piece will be separated at that point. So yeah, he does have a lot of options there. Now, what I want to do is not necessarily be fumbling with all those on camera, but instead dramatically pose him with his accessories. So first things first, he does come with alternate hands for his Shadow Clone Jutsu hand pose. That's just what I'm going to call it. So Shadow Clone Jutsu stuff looks pretty good. I mean, it's just two hands and a lot of posing, but you can see that because his arms can cross in front of him, it actually allows the pose to work, which is not the same case for a lot of Naruto figures. So props to Bandai on that. So here he is doing the famous Naruto run pose. This is the determined face. His really gigantic looking open hands. Naruto also has this super comically goofy face, which I love. You can see like he's reacting to how giant his hands look. Naruto includes one kunai knife, as well as hands to hold it. And then Naruto comes with crossed arms. Now these are separate arms from the normal ones, so that they're flat enough to cross across the chest. And they've been doing this with Figuarts since like Dragon Ball Z's Piccolo. And that one, was kind of awkward because it was one solid piece. This one is actually two separate pieces, so it's a lot easier to plug together. It also looks really horrifying when you're putting it together. But once you plug one each into the bicep after removing the arms, and you get it like pegged in together, it honestly doesn't look too bad. But once you get it lined up, it looks pretty decent overall. Naruto, of course, comes with the Rasengan effect piece, because every good Naruto figure should have that. And what's kind of cool is it just pegs into an extra hand. So you got an open hand, little peg, just plug it on. Pretty awesome. Also, we can see his screaming face where he's going, Sasuke! And then the last face we have is this really determined nine-tailed fox sort of vibe. The red eyes, the feral cheeks, the gritted teeth. It's really cool looking and gives him a completely different look as a figure, and I'm glad it's included as an alternate piece. So for comparisons, I thought let's bring in some relevant stuff to get an idea. First of all, here's the Bandai Anime Heroes Naruto. This one is honestly not a bad figure either. Anime Heroes is kind of a spin-off from Bandai of America's Dragon Stars line, which is now under Bandai Namco Toys and Collectibles America, and I'm getting used to that. Kind of a neat figure. I've had him for a little while now because I was kind of looking for a nice, decently articulated Naruto, and he's still a pretty good figure for the $20 price he goes for. But for 15 bucks more, you really can't go wrong with the SH Figuart. But luckily, they're in the same size class, so if you did want to kind of mix and match, which is what I do with Dragon Stars and the Dragon Ball Figuarts when I do get them, I do like to mix and match. So, for example, there's some characters in Anime Heroes that they don't make as Figuarts. I should be able to merge the two collections together. But in general, I do like the Figuart more, but some may like the Anime Heroes more. The Anime Heroes is definitely more affordable. Here's Naruto with a Dragon Ball Figuart, this one being, I think, one of the slightly larger ones. Anyways, here's Tien. I don't buy a lot of Dragon Ball Figuarts, so selection is limited, but Tien here, you can see Naruto and him are kind of in the same size class. It's just sort of Figuart sized, whatever Figuart sized is, which is roughly 5.5 inches tall. And then for Tokusatsu fans out here, here's Naruto with a completely unrelated Tokusatsu Figuart, being Ultraman Fuma. But as you can see, they are in that same size. Now, while not a ninja, here's Kamen Rider Revi, just so the Kamen Rider side of the Figuarts line feels represented. And you can see that Naruto is a little bit shorter, but again, everything's roughly in that same size scale, which is pretty neat. So honestly, the Naruto Uzumaki Jinchuriki Entrusted with Hope SH Figuart is definitely worth it, especially at the $35 price that it's actually going for, which is kind of insane because it's a really good figure. The articulation is superb, the accessories are great, the overall details are really well done, and if you spend 10 bucks and get yourself a Tamashii stage, you can even do more dynamic poses than that. Honestly, I can't recommend this guy enough. If you're a fan of Naruto or want a figure of this character on your shelf, spending the money is totally worth it because he's not overly expensive. Now that being said, the rest of the lineup do hit the $50 to $70 range, so let's see if Sasuke, who's $60, is worth as much as Naruto, who's only $35. Alright, so here is Sasuke Uchiha, he who bears all hatred, and you know what? Pretty good figure overall, but I gotta say right off the bat, not as good as Naruto. First of all, that comes down to design. This skirt piece does block some of the articulation in ways that Naruto doesn't have that issue. So first of all, of course, I think by now we should expect that Sasuke is in the 5 Kage Summit outfit because this is pretty much his, like, quote-unquote default Shippuden look that pretty much every action figure company or statue company or anything makes him in. It's just how it goes. Head sculpt-wise, pretty good. Sasuke has kind of a generic face. Hate to say it, it's the facts. But honestly, the way they did his hair, pretty nice overall. Especially because it doesn't have the headband to kind of break up the forehead. They did a decent job. Otherwise, proportions-wise, pretty good. I mean, his hands don't look nearly as large as Naruto's, which is nice. And down to the feet, pretty well rendered. Now, this whole piece here is a rubber overlay. It feels like a good rubber. I guess we'll see how long it lasts over time. But it is a rubber overlay because that's just going to make sure that the articulation still works. This part here, what's kind of interesting is that it is ball jointed in 3 places. So you've got, this sort of cord wrap thing, Orochimaru stuff. This is ball jointed here, that is ball jointed there, and it's all ball jointed there. But it's in kind of an incredibly soft plastic, so while you can ball join it and you can remove it, I have noticed that, like, the colors, I don't know if it's a stress mark per se, but there's sort of discoloration on any of those parts, which is slightly concerning. But, it is all very much a soft material around the waist. Of course, he does have the symbol on the back, which is molded and painted, and that's pretty nice. So looking at his articulation, his head moves around, his head tilts back. Now, it tilts back, but not as far, because the hair runs right into the collar. It does tilt forward pretty good, and you also notice that this hair piece on the back of the neck is a separate piece from the upper hair, so that means when you move his head, his hair doesn't kind of get out of place, which is kind of neat. Shoulders move forward, move all the way forward, sort of the way back, but this is also good for a lot of his poses with his sword, which is nice. Shoulders move all around, you got bicep swivels, you got double jointed elbows, you got wrist pivots and swivels. The torso articulation is a left and right, up and down, all that goodness. It's 1, 2, 3 ball joints, so that also means you can have some waist swivel. Hips move out, they move forward, they're the same style hips as Naruto's, and they also got in and out, and then you can double bend the knee, and then also you've got an articulation point here. Angles move forward, back, left, right, and toe. It is pretty much the same articulation Naruto has, except a little more restricted because you can't get around the skirt no matter what you do. It's just always going to be kind of in the way. And that's not a fault of the figure so much as a fault of the design. I do miss the days when Sasuke wore normal clothing that wasn't all flowy and stuff, because it did make for better action figures. But overall, that's pretty much what you got to him. Now, to do his head swaps for his faces, you do remove the front part of his hair, and then you pull his face from there. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but that is pretty much how you swap out the faces on him, because he doesn't have a headband to get in the way, so they just split right there, which isn't too noticeable, but there is a line. And then you also can pop his wrists. For some reason, he has smaller wrist pegs and smaller hands, but they do swap out just as easy. And then on the back of the skirt is interesting, because you got to pull this piece out, which is part of the snakeskin thing. And then there's an alternate piece that plugs in, and this one holds the sword sheath, which we'll look at in a minute. But just like I mentioned on the front, the material is so soft, it's kind of worrisome, because you go to turn it, and it doesn't really want to turn, and it sort of looks like it's stressing out. So I would be very careful with that piece in particular. I think it's just because the material's soft, and that's why it looks like it's discoloring. But it does seem like you don't want to swap that back and forth too often, because, yeah, that's a little worrisome. The whole skirt thing, not my favorite part about this. But he does come with quite a few accessories, so let's take a look at them. So first up, he has these relaxed hands, not specific for any pose. They're just relaxed. They're good for posing in different ways. So it comes with multiple forms of the sword of Kusanagi, including this one, which is fully sheathed, fits in the back. It is just one solid piece, but it looks pretty good when you want it holstered on the back of his waist. You also get a version of the sword where it's half removed. This is essentially the empty sheath with an extra piece plugged onto the end, which is pretty cool. I like that they've been doing this with SH Figuarts for years. Just gives it a cool effect. And also, as we can see, here's one of his alternate faces where he's got the Sharingan eyes. And that's pretty much all his alternate faces have some form of the Sharingan, which is pretty cool. I like that, again, just like with Naruto, you get sort of a different look within the same package, and I really appreciate that. Naturally, of course, we do get an open sword, as well as the open sheath from the previous segment, but you can see it looks really nice. You got the sword, you got Sasuke, you got a gritted teeth, Sharingan eyes head. It's pretty awesome. I like the face options especially, and also the different hand options for holding the sword in the sheath properly. There's two other pairs of hands. These open hands, which give you a lot of options, and these sort of curled fingers, which remind me of him powering up his Chidori more than anything. And then, of course, Sasuke comes with an effect for the Chidori itself, which plugs on as a hand. There's no hand inside of it, which is very, very streamlined and very successful, because you couldn't even tell if there was a hand inside there, so I think that works incredibly well. And then on top of that, we have one last face, which is Sasuke's face screaming with a Sharingan eye and a Rinnegan eye, which is pretty awesome. Plenty of options for Sasuke here. The only major comparison I want to make with Sasuke is between the SH Figuarts and the anime heroes. I didn't think the anime heroes was very good, and I still think that. It's like his color tone is off. The colors are just really weird. The SH Figuart is just way better. That being said, the anime heroes is a third of the price, so take your pick as to what you think is best for you. Personally, the anime heroes is like even more flawed than the Figuart. This design just does not translate well into action figures overall because of the giant skirt piece. It really holds a lot of it back. But overall, I mean, this one's okay. It serves the purpose of Sasuke. This one's a better figure. And then, of course, here is Sasuke with Naruto. Height-wise, they do match up pretty good, and at least they scale well within the line that they're supposed to be part of, which is a good thing because they should be, and they look nice together. So overall, Sasuke's pretty good. I think that for the price being up from Naruto, he does come with more accessories, obviously all the different versions of the sword. He does have more hands, and I think he has about the same amount of faces. But overall, he is nice. It's just this design of Sasuke is always going to have problems whenever it's translated to figure form, and that's just an unavoidable fact. That being said, if you are looking for a Sasuke figure, he's not bad overall, and, you know, just go in knowing that the skirt kind of gets in the way of a lot of the articulation, and you'll probably be fine. So overall, the Naruto Figuarts line is off to a pretty good start. I think Naruto's fantastic. Sasuke's a little flawed just due to his overall design, but these are really great figures, and much, much improved over the previous Figuarts releases. So hopefully this line continues to go strong. Sakura and Kakashi are on the way, and I guess we'll see who comes next. Maybe a Gaara with some better sound effects. But overall, I really do like these two figures, and I do recommend them. Though I can recommend Naruto a little bit more because of his price point. You really can't beat 35 bucks for a fully featured figure like that. And honestly, Sasuke's pretty good if you want to continue collecting the line. But at the end of the day, I recommend both of these. They're pretty solid releases. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell to keep up with future uploads on the channel. Be sure to leave a comment down below and tell me which do you think would win in a fight, Naruto or Sasuke. I know there's like canon answers to that, but what do you think? Which do you think is actually stronger? And also be sure to check out Hero Club at hero-club.com for hero news and more, and my awesome graphic designer on Twitter at darkclaw643. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.